A journey from darkness to light. In a small town, nestled between mountains and rivers, there lived a man named Jack. Jack was known by everyone in the town as a quiet, reserved person. He always kept to himself, and most people assumed he was just shy. But deep inside, Jack was struggling with something far more painful than anyone could imagine. The darkness within. Jack had been carrying the weight of sadness and despair for years. He felt like he was trapped in a dark tunnel with no way out. Every day felt like a battle just to get out of bed. He had lost interest in everything that once brought him joy. His job, which he had once been passionate about, now felt like a burden. His friendships had faded away, and he found it hard to connect with anyone anymore. The pain grew so intense that Jack started to believe that there was no point in living. He couldn't see a future for himself, and the thought of continuing to live in such misery seemed unbearable. Jack began to think about ending his life. He thought it was the only way to escape the pain. The turning point. One cold, rainy night, Jack walked to the bridge that crossed the river just outside of town. He stood there for a long time, staring at the dark water below. His mind was racing with thoughts of ending it all. The rain soaked through his clothes, but he didn't care. He felt numb, both physically and emotionally. As he stood there, lost in his thoughts, an old man walked by. The old man noticed Jack and stopped. "Are you okay, son?" the old man asked gently. Jack didn't know what to say. He had been so alone for so long that the kindness in the old man's voice surprised him. "I don't know," Jack finally replied, his voice trembling. The old man looked at Jack with understanding eyes. "You look like you're carrying a heavy burden," he said. "Why don't you come with me? I have some tea at my house. We can talk, or we can sit in silence, whatever you prefer." For some reason, Jack felt a small spark of hope. He didn't want to be alone any more, even if just for a little while. He nodded, and together they walked to the old man's house. The power of connection. The old man's house was warm and cozy. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. The old man handed Jack a cup of tea and sat down across from him. "My name is Samuel," the old man said with a gentle smile. "I don't know what you're going through, but I've been through my own share of dark times. I want you to know that you're not alone." For the first time in a long time, Jack felt safe enough to open up. He told Samuel about the darkness that had been consuming him, about the thoughts of ending his life, and about how he felt like there was no way out. Samuel listened patiently, never interrupting. When Jack finished, Samuel spoke. "I won't pretend to have all the answers," he said, "but I do know that life is full of ups and downs. Sometimes it feels like the darkness will never end, but I promise you, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel." Samuel shared his own story of struggle. He had lost his wife to illness many years ago, and had felt the same crushing despair that Jack was feeling now. But Samuel had found a way to keep going, one day at a time. He had learned that life was precious, even in its darkest moments. The journey to healing. That night marked the beginning of Jack's journey to healing. He didn't suddenly feel better overnight, but something had changed. He realized that he didn't want to give up, not yet. He wanted to try, even if it was hard. Jack began to visit Samuel regularly. They would talk about life, about the pain, and about the small things that brought joy. Samuel encouraged Jack to take small steps each day. Start with something simple, Samuel advised. Go for a walk, read a book, or do something that used to make you happy. Jack took Samuel's advice to heart. He started going for walks in the park every morning. At first it was difficult, but gradually he began to appreciate the fresh air, the sound of birds singing, and the beauty of the trees. He started reading again, picking up books that inspired him and gave him hope. Learning to control the mind. As Jack continued his journey, he realized that much of his pain came from the thoughts in his mind. His mind was like a storm, filled with negative thoughts that only made him feel worse. Samuel taught him about mindfulness, a way to calm the mind and focus on the present moment. Jack began practicing mindfulness every day. He would sit quietly, close his eyes, and focus on his breathing. Whenever a negative thought entered his mind, he would acknowledge it without judgment and then gently bring his attention back to his breath. Over time, Jack noticed that his mind became calmer. The storm of negative thoughts began to quiet down, and he could think more clearly, facing fears and building courage. As Jack grew stronger, he realized that he had been avoiding many things out of fear. He was afraid of failure, afraid of rejection, and afraid of the unknown. But Samuel encouraged him to face his fears head-on. "Fear is just a part of life," Samuel said. "It's not something to be ashamed of. The key is to not let it control you." Jack decided to confront his fears. He applied for a new job that he had always wanted but had been too afraid to pursue. He reached out to old friends, even though he feared they might reject him. He started trying new things, like painting and cooking, activities that he had always been curious about but never had the courage to try. Each time Jack faced his fears, he felt a little stronger. He learned that even if things didn't go as planned, it was okay. What mattered was that he tried, and with each attempt his confidence grew, embracing change and finding purpose. As Jack continued to grow, he began to see life differently. He realized that change was a natural part of life and that resisting it only caused more pain. He started to embrace change, seeing it as an opportunity to learn and grow. One day, Jack decided to volunteer at a local shelter. He wanted to give back to the community and help others who were struggling. This decision changed his life in ways he couldn't have imagined. He met new people, made new friends, and found a sense of purpose that he had been missing for so long. Helping others made Jack feel alive again. He realized that his own experiences, the pain he had endured, could be used to help others who were going through similar struggles. He found meaning in his suffering, and it gave him the strength to keep moving forward. The power of gratitude and forgiveness. Through his journey, Jack also learned the importance of gratitude and forgiveness. Samuel had taught him to focus on the good things in life, no matter how small. Jack started keeping a gratitude journal, writing down 3 things he was thankful for each day. This simple practice helped him shift his focus from what was wrong in his life to what was right. Jack also learned to forgive himself. He had been carrying so much guilt and shame for the way he had felt and the mistakes he had made. But Samuel helped him understand that no one is perfect, and that forgiveness is a powerful tool for healing. Jack forgave himself for his past and began to look forward to the future with hope and optimism. Conclusion: a new beginning. Years passed, and Jack's life had completely transformed. He was no longer the man who stood on that bridge, ready to give up. He was now a man who had faced his demons, embraced change, and found a new purpose in life. Jack had learned that life was a journey, filled with both joy and sorrow, light and darkness. But he also learned that even in the darkest times, there is always hope. He had found the strength to keep going, one step at a time, and had emerged from the darkness stronger and wiser. Jack's story is a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always a way out. By facing our fears, controlling our minds, embracing change, and finding purpose, we can transform our lives in ways we never thought possible. And most importantly, it reminds us that we are never truly alone, even when we feel like we are. For Jack, the journey was long and difficult, but in the end, it led him to a life filled with love, joy, and meaning, and that, he realized, was worth every struggle along the way. The loneliness of the long road. After Jack found a new sense of purpose in volunteering and began to help others, he started to notice a different kind of struggle: loneliness. While he had found meaning in his work and felt stronger, there were still moments when the weight of his solitude pressed heavily on him. The late evenings, after he had finished his day at the shelter and returned to his empty apartment, were the hardest. The silence of the night often brought back old memories and fears. Jack realized that while he was making progress in his external life, he still hadn't fully addressed the deep loneliness that lingered within him. He knew that he needed to connect with others on a deeper level, to build meaningful relationships that could offer him companionship and support. Building connections and trust. Determined to overcome his loneliness, Jack decided to put himself out there more. He joined a local community group that focused on outdoor activities like hiking and camping. At first, he felt out of place and struggled to open up to the group. The fear of rejection still haunted him, but he remembered Samuel's advice about facing fears. Slowly, Jack began to make friends within the group. He discovered that many of the people there were also seeking connection and shared similar experiences of feeling lost or alone at times. Through these new friendships, Jack learned the importance of trust, trusting others and, more importantly, trusting himself. These connections became a vital part of Jack's healing process. They gave him a sense of belonging and reminded him that life is not meant to be lived in isolation. The shared experiences of laughter, challenges, and even disagreements helped Jack grow emotionally and made him realize the value of having a supportive community. The challenge of self-acceptance. As Jack's relationships grew stronger, he began to face a new internal challenge: self-acceptance. While he had forgiven himself for his past mistakes, he still struggled with accepting who he was. Jack often compared himself to others, feeling that he was not as successful, not as confident, or not as worthy of love and respect. This self-criticism was a new kind of battle for Jack. It was easier for him to be kind and compassionate towards others than towards himself. He realized that he was still carrying the burden of his past, letting it define his present and future. One day, during a group hike, Jack confided in a friend named Lisa. He told her about his struggle with self-acceptance and how it was holding him back. Lisa listened carefully and then said something that struck a chord with Jack. "Jack," she said, "you are more than your past. You've gone through things that most people can't even imagine, and yet you're still here, still moving forward. That's something to be proud of. You deserve the same kindness and acceptance that you give to others." These words resonated with Jack deeply. He realized that he had been so focused on improving himself that he had forgotten to appreciate who he already was. He began to practice self-compassion, reminding himself that he was enough just as he was, flaws and all. Embracing creativity. As Jack grew more comfortable with himself, he felt a new desire emerging within him, a desire to express himself creatively. Jack had always admired art, music, and writing, but he had never considered himself talented in those areas. However, he began to realize that creativity wasn't about being perfect or creating something flawless. It was about expressing oneself, exploring emotions, and finding joy in the process. Jack decided to take up painting. He started with simple watercolor landscapes, capturing the beauty of the mountains and rivers that surrounded his town. At first, his paintings were rough, but as he practiced, he began to develop his own style. The process of creating art became a form of meditation for Jack. It allowed him to channel his emotions, to let go of his worries, and to focus on the present moment. Through painting, Jack discovered a new passion, something that brought him peace and fulfillment. It became a way for him to communicate with himself, to understand his feelings, and to express them in a way that words could not. Overcoming physical challenges. Around this time, Jack also decided to take on a new physical challenge, running a marathon. It was something he had always admired but never thought he could do. The idea of running 26.2 miles seemed impossible, but Jack was determined to prove to himself that he could achieve anything if he put his mind to it. Training for the marathon was not easy. Jack faced numerous obstacles, from injuries to fatigue, and there were days when he wanted to give up. But each time he felt like quitting, he reminded himself of how far he had come. He remembered the days when getting out of bed was a struggle, and he used that memory to push himself forward. Running became another form of therapy for Jack. It taught him discipline, perseverance, and the importance of setting and achieving goals. The marathon was not just a physical challenge, it was a mental one as well. Jack learned to push through the pain, to keep going even when it seemed impossible, and to celebrate every small victory along the way. When Jack finally crossed the finish line, he felt a sense of accomplishment that he had never experienced before. It wasn't just about the marathon. It was about everything it represented. It was proof that he was stronger than he ever thought possible, and that he could overcome any obstacle that life threw at him. Exploring spirituality. As Jack continued to grow and evolve, he found himself drawn to spirituality. He had never been particularly religious, but he began to explore different spiritual practices in search of deeper meaning and connection. Jack started meditating regularly, seeking a sense of inner peace and clarity. He also explored different philosophies and teachings, from Buddhism to Stoicism, learning about mindfulness, acceptance, and the nature of suffering. These teachings helped Jack gain a new perspective on life. He began to see his struggles not as something to be feared, but as opportunities for growth and learning. Through his spiritual journey, Jack learned the importance of letting go of expectations, of control, and of the need for things to be a certain way. He discovered that true peace came from accepting life as it was, with all its imperfections and uncertainties. This newfound spirituality gave Jack a sense of calm and resilience. It helped him navigate the ups and downs of life with grace, knowing that no matter what happened, he had the inner strength to endure and thrive. The legacy of hope. Years passed, and Jack's life continued to evolve. He had gone from a man on the brink of despair to someone who had found meaning, purpose, and joy. His journey had been long and difficult, filled with challenges and setbacks, but it had also been incredibly rewarding. Jack's story became a beacon of hope for others who were struggling. His message was simple but powerful. No matter how dark things may seem, there is always hope. There is always a way out of the darkness, and there is always a reason to keep going. As Jack looked back on his life, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He was grateful for the struggles, for they had made him stronger. He was grateful for the people who had helped him along the way, like Samuel and Lisa, who had shown him kindness and compassion when he needed it most. And he was grateful for the opportunity to help others, to use his experiences to make a difference in the world.